Welcome to the Podkey summary of Implement High-Resolution Photo Capture from WWDC 2026. A lot of what makes recent iPhone photos look good has less to do with a single shutter press and more to do with a whole chain of decisions happening underneath it. The big story here is flexibility. The camera can chase low light sensitivity, fine detail, faster shooting, or smoother app performance, and developers get a surprising amount of control over which trade-off they want. So this is really a tour of how Apple's newer camera pipeline works, from that 48 megapixel sensor to the behind-the-scenes tricks that keep the camera from feeling slow and heavy. The starting point is the 48 megapixel quad-pixel sensor that came in with the iPhone 14 Pro. A quad-pixel design groups 4 same-color pixels together into one larger effective pixel, which helps the sensor pull in more light when that matters most. That gives you the classic computational photography trade-off in a very practical form. You can bend those pixels and get a more light-sensitive 12 megapixel result, or you can go for a true 48 megapixel image when detail is the priority. What's important is that both options come from the same sensor readout, so developers are not choosing between two separate cameras. They're choosing how to use one very flexible sensor. Then, on iPhone 15, Apple introduced that 24 megapixel default capture pipeline, which is a pretty clever middle ground. The phone first fuses multiple 12 megapixel frames using the photonic engine for HDR, then combines that with a full sensor 48 megapixel capture to keep more fine detail. The result is a 24 megapixel photo that carries more texture and resolution than a 12 megapixel shot, but without the much larger storage hit you'd expect from jumping all the way to 48. In practice, the file size lands at roughly half again as large as a 12 megapixel image, not 4 times the size, which is a very human kind of compromise. Better photos, but your storage doesn't immediately start sending distress signals. And because this is the default mode in the camera app, it shows Apple's larger philosophy pretty clearly. Use computation to stretch image quality further without making the experience feel expensive or cumbersome. For developers using AVC capture photo output, one of the most important controls is photo quality prioritization. There are 3 modes: speed, balanced, and quality. Speed keeps processing light and gets the shot through quickly, but you give up some detail and overall image fidelity. Balanced is the middle lane, where the system still does meaningful work on the image without leaning as hard into longer processing. Quality pushes for the best final image, but that usually means more time after capture while everything gets processed. And this setting is not just about feel. It directly affects what resolutions you can actually get. If an app wants 48 megapixel capture, it has to use balanced or quality. 12 megapixels works across all 3 modes, including speed. So for app makers, this becomes a real design choice. Do you want the highest detail, or do you want the camera to stay snappy under pressure? One of the smarter pieces of the whole system is deferred photo processing. Instead of making the user wait around for the fully processed image, the camera can return a lightly processed proxy image right away. That keeps the interface responsive, and more importantly, it lets the next capture begin as soon as the capture stage is done, instead of waiting for all the heavy image work to finish. The full resolution final image can be fetched later, either from the photo library or when the device has a quieter moment to finish the job. This is one of those features people may never notice directly, which usually means it's doing its job. The camera just feels less sticky. That gets even more interesting with fast capture prioritization. When the system notices rapid burst shooting, it can automatically step down from quality to balance prioritization, so the time between shots stays short. That matters in exactly the situations where you don't have time to negotiate with your camera, like sports or anything moving unpredictably. And starting with iOS 27 on iPhone 16 and 17, those balanced fast captures can also be finished later through deferred processing. So the phone is basically trimming perceived delay from both sides. It lowers immediate processing demands, then moves more of the remaining work into the background. For action-heavy shooting, that's a pretty meaningful shift. You spend less time waiting and more time actually getting frames. There's also a less glamorous but very important performance tool: preallocating photo resources. If a developer calls Set Prepared Photo Settings Array with the intended max photo dimensions and quality prioritization, the system can allocate the needed buffers ahead of time. That matters, because if those resources are not prepared in advance, the camera may have to reconfigure the pipeline during capture. And that can add serious latency, even several seconds in some cases, especially with 48 megapixel captures or multi-frame fused processing. A few seconds is forever when someone's holding up a phone trying to take a picture of anything that won't politely freeze in place. So this is one of those technical details that has a very non-technical payoff. The app feels ready when the user is ready. Another useful control is checking supported max photo dimensions on the active AV's capture device format, which has been available from iOS 16 onward. That tells developers the largest resolution the hardware can deliver in the current configuration. But the advice here is pretty sensible. Don't just grab the biggest dimensions because they sound impressive in a demo. Higher dimensions mean more memory use, more processing overhead, and often more delay. So the better choice is the size that actually fits the app's purpose. If the job is document scanning, social sharing, or fast repeated captures, the maximum possible output may be the wrong answer. That's really the theme running through all of this. The camera system gives you a lot of capability, but it works best when you pick the right tool, not just the biggest one. So the headline is that modern iPhone photography is a balancing act between sensor hardware, computational processing, and a bunch of timing decisions that shape how the camera feels in your hand. The impressive part isn't just that it can shoot 48 megapixels, it's that it can decide when 48, 24, or 12 makes more sense, and do it in a way that usually feels pretty effortless. Which, honestly, is the dream for camera tech. A lot of complexity, very little drama. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.